Nobody asked you whether you wanted a hotel full of young men in the middle of your community, perhaps down the road from
But
a
is
school.
that the most important issue for people's lives?
Two things I would say. Well, obviously, it knocks onto everything. It knocks onto health, knocks onto the economy, the amount it's costing us. But it's such a fundamental issue about what do we want our country to be? What do we want our communities to be? Do we want... I mean, I lived in a part of... Hang on.
I can't contain myself.
No.
You're going to contain yourself for just a little bit more.
Love this idea of lived experience unless it's the lived experience of people who don't agree. So my lived experience is that I lived in a part of London where when I had to walk down the street, there were tables and tables full of young men. Now, whether they were illegal or legal, I've no idea. I have a strong suspicion that most of them were not legal, but anyway, they were there, and it meant you ran the gauntlet. Now, I'm a grown woman, and I felt uncomfortable. I wouldn't go for a run in shorts, for example, because I just automatically felt uncomfortable. But for my daughter, I was concerned about her safety. Now, that's not something, that's a real change in the way that we are living, and it's not something that British people agreed to. In fact, quite the opposite.
OK, so it is a top priority for you. Narinder.
I think you made some wild accusations there. I think that if you are blaming some 30,000 people in 67 million population of a country for all our societal ills is such a dangerous... And the fact that people are worried about immigration, 30,000 people are not the problem, are not the reason for... I have to finish. 30,000 people are not the problem for the NHS breaking down. 30,000 people are not the problem while we can't afford our mortgages and pay our rent. 30,000 people are not the reason for the cost of living crisis. They're not the reason our gas bills are so high. You can't say 30,000 people are a problem for the reason for our problem.
I just want to add that you're talking about asylum seekers.
Even immigrants.
The question was about immigration.
Even immigration.
Migration.
We need people in this country.
Sure.
We have a...
Well, I just want to make that clarification.
Yes, all immigration. Because guess what? 267,000 Ukrainians were in a problem, but suddenly immigration is a problem.
What do you
let
say?
me finish.
No,
Could you let me finish?
What do you
We're going to have to go. We're going to go to
talk.
break. We're going to go to break in just a second. So just finish your point, and then we'll pick this up. Go on.
I think the fact is that if you've got a whole public and you've got politicians in, they're the problem. The problem is the billionaires at the top who won't pay net tax.
All right.
People that...
So guys, all these illegal immigrants, or what we'll call criminal activity immigrants...
Eddie, that's not fair. Eddie, that's not fair to call them criminals. They're asylum seekers. There's women and children on those boats too. And also, I'd like to say, if you let them work, because they have to sit in hotels for like 2 years nearly, trying to wait to be processed because the system is so slow, they want to work. They could be contributing to the pot.
I think Eddie's got a really good point, which is that the moment you start handing money over to organised crime and you get to this country, either you...
Who's handing money over to organised crime?
To get on a boat, you have to pay.
Oh, sorry. They're paying to get here.
So you were right.
Yeah.
Either your family have raised that money or you have a debt. You arrive in this country and you have to pay that debt off. Now, how are you going to do that? Probably through crime. So we are importing crime.
Why wouldn't you do that by getting a job?
Because you're not allowed to work when you're supposedly...
So that's what Narinder was saying, that perhaps people should be allowed to.
They shouldn't be here in the first place.
Okay,
This paragraph presents a thoughtful analysis of a sensitive political issue, focusing on immigration, community identity, and public opinion. It highlights that the discussion is not just about government policies, but also about people's emotions and their concerns regarding the future of their nation. At the beginning, the paragraph emphasizes a feeling of exclusion among ordinary citizens. Many people believe they were not consulted about major social or demographic changes in their communities. This reflects a wider political concern about the gap between policymakers and the general public. The example of a hotel full of young men is used to create a strong image, symbolizing sudden change and a perceived loss of control. The paragraph also explains the importance of personal experience, often called lived experience, in shaping such arguments. By describing feelings of discomfort while walking through unfamiliar surroundings, the speaker makes the issue more relatable and emotional rather than purely statistical. This is a common technique in political rhetoric to connect with the audience. However, the paragraph also maintains a balanced view by pointing out that such perceptions may be based on assumptions rather than verified facts. It suggests that linking unfamiliar groups directly to danger can lead to fear and overgeneralization. Critics argue that this can distract from more complex social and economic realities. Finally, the paragraph concludes that the debate is divided into two main perspectives. One side prioritizes security, control, and cultural identity, while the other stresses the need for evidence-based thinking, caution, and social responsibility. Overall, the passage shows that this is not just a debate about immigration, but a larger issue involving identity, trust in government, and whose voices are valued in shaping national discussions. This segment presents a strong counterargument against the idea that immigration is the main cause of a country's major problems. The speaker challenges what they see as an exaggerated and misleading claim that a small number of migrants can be blamed for large, complex national issues. The argument begins by putting numbers into perspective. By repeatedly mentioning 30,000 people in comparison to a much larger national population, the speaker emphasizes that such a small group cannot reasonably be responsible for widespread problems like pressure on healthcare, rising housing costs, or the cost of living crisis. This helps shift the focus from individuals to larger structural issues. Another key point in the paragraph is the distinction between asylum seekers and general immigration. The speaker argues that these two are often confused in public discussions. By separating them, the argument suggests that immigration, in many cases, actually supports the economy and society rather than harming it. The mention of Ukrainian refugees is used to highlight inconsistency in public attitudes. It suggests that people may respond differently to different groups of migrants, possibly bias or perception, rather than actual impact. This point questions whether opinions on immigration are always fair or objective. The argument then shifts toward a broader critique of those in power. Instead of blaming migrants, the speaker points to political leaders and economic elites as the real sources of inequality and hardship. According to this view, problems arise from policy decisions and unequal distribution of wealth, not from vulnerable groups. In conclusion, this passage represents a classic counter-narrative. It rejects the idea of blaming migrants, scapegoating, and instead encourages a deeper understanding of structural and systemic issues. It reflects a wider political debate between those who blame external factors and those who believe internal governance and economic systems are the true causes of national challenges.